And now for something completely different.
I blew it. I'll try again.
And now for something completely different.
The sun peeks over the horizon. Your excitement builds. The animals in the field start to stir. The forest comes alive with sounds. The sunlight glimmers off the lake, and the mountains start to shed their morning fog. So load up your favorite ammo, grab a few buddies, and head out to make some memories. And tell the rest of the world that you've gone hunting. Gone hunting is a 1 to 4 player game of family fun where you build a unique hunting ground, scout different animals, buy weapons and gear, and roll dice to hunt. Complete objectives and try not to miss. So let's load up the truck and back gone hunting today. See you in the field.
And welcome to the third episode of Reality of Publishing Comics. Paul Gomez and special guest Max Devill.
What's
How
up?
you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Today we're going to be talking about script writing, world building, and comic Bible, if you know what that is or whatnot. So, you've done a few scripts yourself. You got like a number of titles underneath you. I don't remember them all. So
yeah, we've got 4 titles that we've done so far. We've got Mary Machine Gun, which is our flagship title. We did Neo Tokyo next, which was a cyberpunk story that we've it didn't sell very well, so we kind of pulled the plug on it.
Right.
We got Human Hunters, which is all the famous monsters meets Mission Impossible. They're doing the Mission Impossible stuff, which is pretty cool. And then we've got Ninja Bimbos versus Zombies from Deep Space. And we're in November. We're releasing Mary Machine Gun number 4. In October, we're releasing Human Hunters 2, and we're currently kickstarting Ninja Bimbos versus Zombies from Deep Space 2.
That's awesome. So which one was your favorite build, write? All that good stuff. It'd
be Mary Machine Gun because I have a writing partner, Johnny Reed. He's half the company. We write everything together now, but Mary Machine Gun, the first issue I wrote myself. The second issue he edited.
Right.
So that's what brought him on as a co-writer.
So whenever you first started writing your scripts, did you kind of look into it and find different ways to write scripts? Did you already know how to do it?
I went and I looked up Johnny also does have a comic store. I looked up some script formats just to see what I liked the best, and the one that kind of stuck out to me is dead simple easy was the Dark Horse format.
Right.
So I've been using that.
Now, and I heard a lot of new creators are starting to use different programs and whatnot. Have you happened to seen any of those?
Microsoft Word.
Right. I like Word myself. That's what I use, as a matter of fact. Whenever I first started, I went out and checked out a few different scripts from people, and it was really looking at their style of writing that kind of led me to the way I write my scripts as well. Usually I start with just a template, basically, page 1, panel 1. Yep. Sometimes I put rows in there.
I do page 1, panels, and then it'll be then at the end of the page it'll say however many, so it'll be page 1 6 panels, page 1 4 panels,
right?
And then it'll be page 1 4 panels, panel 1, and then what's going on in the panel,
right?
And then the sound effects. I'll do the onomatopoeia, and then I do the dialogue.
Yeah.
Then I do the captions, and I do individual captions, and then I do an overall caption if I need it. These are only if it needed.
Well, one of the things my editors have told me that I did a little bit different than most is whenever I do page 1, I go underneath it and I put a brainstorming, and I put them in a little block, and then I'll put brainstorming of what's going to be on that page. So throughout my panels, I'm showing my scenes of my brainstorming idea for that entire page.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I picked that up because I happened to seen somebody basically put what they were going to write on one of their pages, but like not on all of them, and it just kind of felt right for me to do for every page because I could go look down the list of doing my brainstorming first, and then seeing where everything's going to lay out, where my beats are going to hit,
Mm-hmm.
where the page turn's going to go to make sure that I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that you really need to pay attention to, and a lot of people don't pay attention to is the page turn.
Yeah. Yeah, and that really is one of the biggest things about script writing. If you know where that page turn in, it obviously that first page, a lot of people call it that establishing shot page. And I know a lot of new creators don't really understand that coming in, but that establishing shot really brings that reader to that world and makes them understand this is that starting point.
Mm-hmm.
And then you turn that page, and then you've got those two beautiful pages that want to pull the person in to read exactly what's going on.
Yep, and it doesn't always have to be a splash page, people.
Right, right. It really don't. I mean, a lot of people kind of are pulled to that direction, but it really doesn't have to be a splash page. So, you know what I'm talking about whenever I talk about a comic Bible?
Yeah, it's all your characters and all their stats and their backstories and everything.
So, see, whenever I was a new creator, I didn't exactly understand what that was, and I'm sure a lot of new creators don't because they're not used to it. I think a lot of new creators jump into that world building.
Yeah, world building is fun. It really is. And I'm forever DM.
Yeah,
I've been D&D, Dungeons and Dragons role playing DM for 25 years. So the first thing I do with my characters is I make a character sheet.
Right.
You know, that way I know how fast they are, how smart they are, how charismatic they are, how old they are, how strong they are, what they look like. You know, the stuff they're carrying. Do they have any magical powers?
Yeah.
You know, and then I make this character sheets for everybody. And Johnny helps because he's the co-writer now. But this is how I would have done it anyways. And then we write the backstories of them all. You don't have to make it. I mean, people get scared when you say comic Bible because they think you're going to have to write like a 50-page essay on each character. When really a paragraph does it just fine.
It's like an index to me, if you really ask me. I mean, it's something to go back and look and see at a quick glance what you're doing and making sure that you're not really going too far off script, if you will. And you know, the thing I find about most brand new creators is they jump into the world building and forget about the whole Bible and script kind of thing.
Well, the Bible's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, everyone jumps into that world building because it's so much fun and they get lost in it. But there's like two major things that I think of whenever I hear people start world building is, do you know how deep your script's going to be?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many pages? If you're going to build a world and you're writing out 300 pages, but your first book is just going to be 22 pages, how are you going to shove all that in together?
Yeah. And, you know, your script can also do a lot of the world building for you. It can answer a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Because that's all world building is really, is answering a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
When I do world building, I start with 2 M's. I start with who's in the majority and is there magic? And that answers a lot of the questions to begin to go through everything else. You know, I mean, if there's no magic, then you know you don't even have to deal with that stuff. Just toss that out.
I like that idea. I've never heard of it that way. Mine's kind of tricky. On most of my comics, I try to base it in reality.
Yeah,
but
we do a lot of that. We do a lot of that, but we do alternate histories.
Right.
You know, it's like in Mary Machine Gun kills the Beast of Jovedon, the werewolf that was supposedly terrorized France in the 1700s, like in 1767. And this guy was the one who got credit for killing it, but she killed the werewolf, and then because he got knocked out during the fight, and then she staged the scene to make it look like he killed him. He killed the werewolf, so he took the credit for it because they're supposed to work in the shadows, right? Their organization works from the shadows, so she set up the whole scene for him and everything, and he thought that he did the killing. But if you read the story, this is what really happened.
Right. Yeah, and I'm always scared, especially whenever I get a new creator coming to me and they're like, I've got this story that I want to write, and it's like, do you have a script? Well, not yet. So you're basically just world building. And they're like, yeah, but I've got 100 pages that I want to turn into a comic. And whenever you got a story that's 100 pages long, it's kind of hard to break it down into like 22 pages.
Oh yeah, I mean, unless you designed it to be set that way.
But most stories aren't designed that way, especially if you're starting out. Most people come with a regular story format, and they don't understand that you're going to have to take out a lot of key elements, and you're going to have to describe it in the panels as opposed to writing it out in details in that story.
And you may have to do the old movie trick too, is like combine characters into one character to streamline the story. Because 100 pages of prose.
Yeah,
that's a minute of screen time. Is typically a minute of a page of prose script is a minute of screen time.
Right.
So that'd probably be couple pages at least.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. But to me, it was like I definitely wanted to learn how to script write, because if I'm not an artist, so I was going to have to basically give that script to my artists, and they'd have to understand it. And obviously, I did want to have that back and forth, but I wanted them to understand it from my script first.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it was kind of hard to learn it, because I did know how to write, I guess, like short stories, and I had learned how to write like TV scripts and whatnot, but a comic script's totally different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like what a lot of people, like a lot of mistakes I see with like new comic writers and stuff like that, is they'll describe two actions in one scene, one panel. And I'm like, buddy, you can't do that.
Now, I'm a big fan of not putting that much dialogue in one panel, because to me, a panel is like a snapshot in time.
Yep.
So if you're putting 3 or 4 paragraphs for like 15, 20 minutes of dialogue, an hour worth of dialogue in one little picture, you're like, well, why aren't they moving while they're talking all this stuff?
Yeah, I'm not Alan Moore. I don't write big, long diatribes on things. I usually keep my stuff pretty short and concise, to the point. Our comics they're bad girl comics at that. We got a lot of boobage and some up the skirt stuff, and some underpants, and there is some nudity in the later books, and like Mary Machine Gun 3, there's some nudity, and Mary Machine Gun 2, there's a tiny bit of nudity.
Right.
But I don't remember where I was going with that. When we got to the boobage and the nudity, and I got lost of train of thought.
How many pages are your books usually?
At minimum, they're usually 36. Well, Mary Machine Guns have been 36. There's one that was 48.
Wow.
And then one was 36. Or one was 36, 2 was 48, 3 was 36, and I think 4 is 30, 38.
Those are relatively
pages.
big. I mean, a lot of people say start out with small projects before you go into the larger ones.
Yeah, well, it really it was based on how long it took to tell the story.
Right.
Because really it was supposed to be a trilogy book.
Right.
It was supposed to be just a trilogy. And then like as I got to like book 2 and I finished that off, I was like, man, I've got way too much stuff to tell in book 3. I'm going to have to make this 4 books.
Right.
So we made it 4 books.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good thing to do, to break down your stories sometimes. Whenever I started writing one of my books, Bushibu Circus Mysteries, I originally intended it for 12 issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I had broke it down into like 12 side issues, I guess you would, 12 smaller stories.
12
But
main ideas.
an overall arc that went through from 1 to 12, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a journey, but you have all these smaller parts that kind of show you the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most people don't have that understanding that you have to capture a story in one issue.
Yeah. I mean, you really you have to, every issue has to give the reader something.
Yeah.
It can't be, I mean, like, you'll watch a lot of like these TV shows nowadays that are on like Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or any of those streaming services, Paramount Plus and stuff. And you'll be like, oh, that was a filler episode.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. It was just a filler episode. And I'm like, you can't just have filler comic books,
Right.
because people will feel ripped off, especially at the price point that a lot of these Kickstarter and Indiegogo books are coming in at.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be a little bit easier whenever it was back in the day where you had all those kind of comic books that just had those standalone issues.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, the readers are a little bit more, I guess, wanting something bigger from things. And with the way the comic books have crossovers and bigger storylines, they expect more.
Yeah, definitely. They definitely expect more out of all the comic books that come out nowadays. I mean, I don't think what if they did a thing where they, like Spider-Man used to have, he'd solve the problem in every issue,
Right. Right.
Nowadays if you did that, it's just called a one shot.
Yeah.
I mean, they still exist, but they're just considered one shots, and they're kind of rare.
Right.
And the reason why is because people get with the characters and they like them and they want to see more of what these characters are going through, and they want to see these characters grow as people. Doesn't mean they have to grow as good people,
right?
But they need to grow in some way, shape, or form. Something needs to happen to them. It needs to change them, and they become a different person based on something that happened in the story.
So one of the things about characters growing and whatnot, does it help you to have a Bible to make sure that you're not making a Mary Sue or a kind of character that's overpowered, if you will?
Kind of. We always try to give our characters some sort of weakness,
Right.
Even if that weakness is just their naivete.
Right.
We try to give them some sort of weakness at all times. It could be, vampires are weak during the day, or the mummy's weak at night, or different things like that. But it's kind of our kryptonite. We always have to give our characters some sort of kryptonite, even if that kryptonite is a crippling mental disorder.
Right. and I definitely agree. I believe it makes the readers more attached to the characters whenever they are a little damaged, if you will. I mean, because it makes them feel that they can relate to them.
Yeah.
Because they aren't perfect.
Yeah, they're not the perfect protagonist, I mean, we've got a new book that's coming out next year. It's coming out with Mary Machine Gun. It's called Mary Machine Gun Dark America, and the main character is Dark America, who's this blonde girl who was a nun that was abused by a Catholic cardinal. In the previous Mary Machine Gun books, she was one of the nuns that was being abused by this cardinal.
Oh, wow.
And she's kind of like lost her mind, and now she's basically the Punisher. She goes around finding people that are abusing people or breaking the law, and she tortures them. And
now that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, she's kind of like that bad person, but still good.
Yep. Anti-hero.
An anti-hero. That's that's not really a term that you heard back when, but
Not really. It's a kind of a new thing.
and yeah, nowadays you hear it just about everywhere. I think a lot of people try to strive to make an anti-hero, but it's one of those things that's hard to walk that fine line.
Yeah, because I mean, you got having an anti-hero and a villain. It's very, very, very difficult to do.
So I've got this villain, and he's going to come later in one of my books. And I tell people I want to make a villain that people are going to love. They want to love him, but understand that why he's hated. And this villain right here is protecting children, but he's just torturing people. You know, and
it's always,
because
and that's good because of the juxtaposition there is great. I like that.
Yeah. So, like I say, it's kind of hard to walk that fine line of anti-hero kind of thing.
Well, it's like when you go with anti-hero, they can do bad stuff to people, but the bad stuff they're doing to people, the people that are getting the bad stuff done to them need to be worse than the things that are happening to them.
Right.
So, like, if you're going to have a torture scene where she cuts some dude's fingers off, he needs to really deserve it. And you need to show that, because if you don't, then you just got a villain.
Right. And then you've got to develop that character for the reader to understand the reasons behind it. And like I say, that's why you got to walk that fine line. I think that's why Bibles are really important for creators to make. And a lot of them forget to do that. Whenever they jump into that world building, it's so immersive and so fun to keep going at it. And I think
because there's always a question you can answer.
Yeah.
It's like, what color are stop signs in my world?
Right.
I mean, you can have any question at all that you can ask that question in your world. So it's always fun to play those mind games, those thought experiments and everything,
Right.
Oh, what would the laws be like if I could make the laws? What would the laws be like? And then you can start putting those laws into action in your world. And it turns out to be whatever you want it to be. That's the beauty of fiction.
Yeah, that is. I mean, it's kind of to me, it's kind of easier whenever you're world building and nothing's there. Like if you're doing sci-fi. Because sci-fi, you have such an open range of being able to do just about anything and everything. And if you're basing stuff in reality, you're kind of like keeping the laws that are there and just kind of pushing the limits a little bit.
Yep.
And I try to explain, whenever you're world building, you got to figure out where that world starts and ends, kind of thing. Because if you don't know or you don't understand it, then your reader's not going to know.
Yeah, the reader's not going to know or understand it at all.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be their guide through your entire world. And usually, you make a character that's the protagonist that ends up being the guide.
Right. Yeah, right. That's the hard thing. So I read a comic book just recently, and I forget the name of it. I think it was like robot sex and world or something like that. But it was a one-shot issue, and I felt like I was reading a book of someone just world building in a science fiction issue. And it was so immersive and so interesting, but it felt like they forgot the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what
kind of like some of those Love, Death, and Robots that they had on Netflix. Some of those are really good, but some of them you're kind of like, all right, I see you're just doing a cool animation here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I tell people, it's like you have to have a story to tell people, even though you're building this cool world, where are you going to take them to, and what's their purpose? I mean, it's nice to see these creatures that are roaming around, and maybe this robot that's not talking in the language, speaking in emotes instead of like regular dialect.
Yep.
But where is it going?
I mean, no matter what, you can put the setting however you want the setting to be, but there still has to be conflict in your story. If there's no conflict in your story, then you don't have a story.
Right.
You have a documentary.
So talking about scripting and story writing, yeah. Do you worry about the beats and the arcs of the story itself
Oh, of
within
course.
that issue?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
We extensively outline everything.
Yeah.
To the point where it's almost like we just cut the outline and paste it into the panel and then clean it up a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit more intense than that. We'll just write down what we want and then we pull it over and then we rewrite it,
Right.
and then add what we need to add to it, so it's a script. So it's got like specific things, because it'll be like Dark America has to fight Mary Machine Gun for 2 pages, you
Right.
know, and then once we get there, we have to come up with a 2-page fight.
Right.
Sometimes we let our artists do it. We're like, I'll be like, hey, do you want to draw just a 2-page fight? You just free reign, do whatever the hell you want. And he'll be like, hell yeah. But then sometimes there's certain things that we need to happen. Like I needed them to end up on the rooftop.
Right.
So we had them get tackled out onto the fire escape, and then one of the characters runs up the fire escape. You know, now they're on the roof. Solved.
Yeah.
And it's there's what a lot of stories are lacking these days is an internal logic that works.
Yeah.
The characters aren't stupid. They got knocked out the window and are fighting in this tiny area. They don't want to fight in this tiny area, so you put in the caption, I need to get some more space between us, and then you have them run up the fire escape.
Right. Right. They lose that logic sometimes. And I think that's either people that are too close to the story or just don't understand where they're going with it. I've been told that the way I write is kind of normal, that a lot of people do it. And what I do is I start at the beginning, obviously, but I usually write the ending,
Mm-hmm.
and then find my main high point in the middle, and
Yep.
then just kind of connect the dots.
Yeah. You start off with the old school thing, the establishing shot, the opening scene, the inciting incident,
Yeah.
the high point, and then the characters are at their low point, and then they hit a highest of high points, and then they hit the lowest of low points, and they're at their lowest, and then the end of the end of the script happens, and then you have at the higher level, you've got the epilogue and
Right.
everything.
Yeah, that's basically the way I do it, and I've heard a lot of people do it that way. So it kind of surprised me because I've never written before. My first book was, less than a year ago.
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of amazed at some of the ways people write. I've heard people brainstorm and just jot down ideas. A lot of people do the world building, but whenever they talk about moving from script from page to page, it always interesting me because I don't know how they get to that ending without knowing it at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, we usually know everything because, like as I said, we meticulously outline everything, so
Yeah.
we know how it's going to end before
Yeah.
we start writing that first page.
Yeah.
We know how it's going to end, and then we write the first page, and then as we start writing, the only thing that sucks though is like as we start writing, we'll go off on tangents. We'll be like, yeah, this is cool. It would go like, oh man, that was like 2 pages. We better hurry up and get back on track.
Oh, it don't fit. Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, because you got those scenes that you start falling in love with whenever you're writing them, and you just want to make it a little bit bigger sometimes.
Yep, just a little bit more impactful. How can we make this a little bit more impactful? How can we really grab the reader with this one? So it was like one of the hardest things to write for us, for me in comics, is comedy. because
Oh,
comedy requires timing,
yeah.
and it's hard to do timing with the comic book.
So one of my favorite comic books that came out right before I started writing was called Goat Man and Bunny Man or something. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so I love that comic, and it was so hilarious and so precise whenever they were dealing with a whole bunch of issues, whether it was being hunted, whether they were hunting, or whether they were making that kind of comedic thing between each other, or the women that were in it. I couldn't do that.
No,
I couldn't do that.
I mean, Ninja Bimbos versus Zombies from Deep Space it's a B movie, so there's a lot of jokes in there.
Yeah.
And one of them really landed. There was one where like this stripper's like going up to her friend. She's like, "Hey, Mitch, are you okay?" And then he attacks her and starts eating her. And she's like, "No, you're a vegan."
Yeah. No, I mean, I could get a little quirk here and there. I had one scene where a guy and girl were in a motel room, and the guy's leaving, and the girl's like, "So what's happening between us?" And the guy's walking out. "Hey, this ain't an ongoing series. This was just a one shot." And he walks out the door. So, I mean, I could get a little quirk in there, but whenever it comes to those bigger comedy things, I don't. I'm amazed at some of these people who can do it in a comic book, because
it's very comic. It's very complicated, because comedy is a lot about timing. There's a lot of things you can still do and get away with it. Surprise! I mean, that with the whole "you're a vegan, Mitch," that was a surprise joke. The rule of threes. If something happens the third time is always the joke.
Yeah.
That works always really well. Really, those are the two main ones that I use: surprise and the rule of threes.
So, talking about scripting, and we were talking a second ago about how we wanted to compact some stuff in. How many panels do you usually do a page? Does it matter?
I think the most panels I've ever done was 8. Mm-hmm. I usually try to keep it at 6 or below. Because that way we've got enough size of the panel to get some detail and some nice pictures, some really good artwork done. Right. It's not all tiny or anything. It's good sized. And Fernando is great at doing layouts. Like I remember I had one page that had like 5 panels or something like that. And one of them was like Charlotte and then the guy she was fighting.
Right.
And then he did this thing where she's standing there like this with her muskets between her arms, and she's just kind of hanging out like this. And she takes up the whole side of the page. Right. And then the other 4 panels are going down the line. And I was like, that is awesome. I love that design.
So, again, I'm pretty new to this stuff. So I'm just about a year into it. Whenever I wrote my first one, I wrote this page right here.
Yep.
And you can kind of see all those pictures back there behind him. And I think I wrote it and I put like 10, 12 panels with this being described. And I didn't know, I didn't know it was hard for an artist to draw all that.
Yeah, they don't like it. they get fussy.
It's like, wait a minute, that's a lot to put on a page. And it's funny because
but that page turned out good though. I mean, it looks nice.
Yeah. It turned out great. I have an amazing artist, Gabriel and Brian Azura, Gabriel Rowland. They did a great job. One of the things that I started learning though is if you simplify it, there's techniques to make it different and pretty as well. Breaking those panels is a great technique that I've learned. Do you write specialty panels on your scripts?
Yeah, we'll do like insert panels, smash panels, different things like that. We'll put that in there. Like if it's like someone's taking pills, and then insert panel of the hand getting pills.
Now, if I was a brand new creator and didn't know what an insert panel is, could you describe that?
It's a small panel that goes inside of the panel of another panel that is kind of like zoomed in on a specific action.
Right. So, as a matter of fact, I think I didn't learn that until about maybe 5 months ago. So that first comic that I wrote, I didn't have any of those.
Nothing.
None of those. I mean, I had the breaking the panels, and I had other stuff, but whenever it came to the inserts, those were kind of new to me on my third book, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, and so it was kind of amazing to learn all this stuff.
You always get better as time goes along. It's just kind of like with the artists. When your interior artist has to draw the same characters 60 times every week, they get better at drawing that character. You start putting more comic books together. You start reading more about different things that are in comic books, and you see things in comic books, like you'll see like the spider sense, I'm like, how do they do the spider sense? Because I want to be able to have this guy have a psychic episode, and I'm like, how do they do spider sense? And I go in there and I'm like, that's just wiggly lines.
Yeah. I mean, and it amazes me, some of the tricks that the artists have doing flashbacks. All they have to do sometimes is change the color of the background, and you can instantly realize that we're not talking about that same time frame. But I mean, as a new creator, one of the things I wanted to teach other people is like, whenever you are scripting, there are these tricks and stuff that you learn, especially like points of view whenever you're writing your scripts.
Yep.
And there's a lot of them that are mainstream, or I guess most people understand, kind of like the worm view, or overhead, or
crane view, and then the worm's eye view, and then the mid shot, and the long shot, and the close up, the extreme close up. Yeah. I mean, they're just camera shots. You just kind of go over through like camera shots.
Yeah. And like I tell most creators, you got to do your due diligence. Whenever I started reading scripts to learn how my style is, I went and read about 15, 20 people's different scripts so I could see how they were. My first editor gave me a few scripts to learn, and he gave me a few books. Brian Michael Bendis is I think it was script writing. I think that's what it was.
Yep.
Intro to comic book script writing. And then Will Eisner's has a great book out there.
Well, I mean, the dude's got an award named after him for a reason.
Right. I mean, and the funny thing is, whenever I got that first book, I was like, oh man, I didn't know he was this great at script writing. But then I started looking at all his older stuff, and it's not just script writing; it's his lettering, his art was just phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
And like I tell, all new creators, make sure you go out there and look and see this stuff. Learn it before you start writing it, and make sure you understand there's several different ways to do a comic, obviously. Several different ways to write a script. There's no one true way to do it. But the thing about it is you want to learn as much as you can, because if you can become better at it, then your artist is going to be able to read your stuff and understand what you're wanting as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you're doing a script, you should be writing it. We write stuff that we like, because something that we would like to see. Don't try to write to become rich, because it's just not going to work. You need to write what you like, write what you know. I mean, to a certain extent. But write what you like, what you want to see. I mean, that's what you want to see is probably what a million other people want to see too.
Right.
And if it's not, it's your job as a writer to sell them on wanting to see it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a hard thing to do. I mean, especially if you get lost in your own world.
Can't nail down the rules of our world, even one with fantastical elements, then the audience won't believe it, which is true.
Right.
You have to definitely have, I'm pretty sure we went over that earlier, but you got to have as I said, the majority in the in Magic, it's like you got to have a set of rules, and then asking all the questions about how your world works. And then, as you said, there's a character Bible. We have world Bibles too, where it's just like the world information about the world.
Yeah. I mean, does this world have 3 suns? Does it have a gravity that we have here? And the thing about it is, if you're jumping around with those kind of things, then you're not going to make it as believable as the story should be. I mean, there's a certain point that you can stretch the truth or move things around, but if you're not making it within a reason or an understandable thing, then the reader's not going to follow it.
Mm-mm. Not at all. They won't be able to. I mean, as long when you have super fantastical elements, like I'll use something that everyone knows for an example. Star Wars.
Yeah.
Right. You got aliens and weirdos and robots and space wizards and all sorts of stuff in there. But Luke Skywalker, who is our guide and the protagonist, he doesn't know about any of this stuff. So we're learning about it as if we were Luke Skywalker, because we're learning about it through his eyes.
Yeah, I mean, they don't explain why the stormtroopers can't hit anything, but
but
we all understand that that's a rule.
Well, they couldn't hit anybody that was worth anything. Obi-Wan Kenobi had to die from Darth Vader. That was a given. Yeah, he had to die from Darth Vader as the inciting incident, and to set Darth Vader up as the villain. And then who else could they hit? I mean, they couldn't hit any of the cast. They didn't have any red shirts.
Yeah,
if they had red shirts, then they'd be good.
Yeah, I think they could have singed Chewbacca's fur a little bit. I mean, I don't think that would have hurt too much. But
I'm going to go on a tangent here since you brought up Chewbacca. Have you seen episode 7?
Yes.
Okay, everyone's seen episode 7. This isn't really a spoiler. Han Solo dies.
Right.
I wanted to see Chewbacca pick up stormtroopers and throw them at Kylo Ren on the bridge. I think because I mean, just seeing a Wookiee rage like that, because he just kind of was like, "Oh, my buddy's dead. Guess I'll run away." I'm like, "No, man. He should have went to the straight Wookiee rage."
He should have. Yeah, I mean, he should have went crazy.
Because he could have been throwing stormtroopers at Kylo Ren, and Kylo Ren could have been cutting him in half on the bridge and almost getting knocked off. That would have been awesome. Missed opportunity.
Yeah, missed opportunity. Man, but yeah, I mean, one of the things I try to stress with people is whenever you're world building, try to build that Bible as well, and try to stay to things, because that's where you're gonna guide your readers through, and that's what's going to pull them in and get them invested into it, is if you can build that world to make them understand it and want to be in it.
Oh yeah, if you can make them want to be in your world, then you've already won half the battle for reader retention.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, I agree. You know, whenever I was sitting down with my kids starting my first book, which was Bushibu Circus Mysteries, at first they were like, let's do magic like Harry Potter. And I'm like, you see that everywhere. And I was like, how are you going to redo that and make it interesting? I'm sure you can. I just didn't know how.
Yeah.
And they're like, let's do vampires. And I'm like, well, you see vampires everywhere. What's going to make it special? And that's kind of the reason we landed on a circus.
Yeah.
You don't see circuses that much.
No.
And then if we encompass those two stories, well, they were talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and then like Harry Potter, and I was like, if you take the ensemble casts of both of those and throw them in a circus, you had never really seen that before. Let's go with that.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah.
So Buffy the TV show or Buffy the movie?
Well, they watched the show.
Okay, because I like the Paul Rubens. He's the ruler stuck in his chest.
Yeah. But and that's what we did, is we started world building. We started with the circus and built our characters and just kind of went from there. all my kids kind of had one idea to the other, and we started writing all that down and started writing our Bible for our characters and our world. It was like, how old are these characters? What exactly are they going to fight? What are they going to discover through all these issues, and what's going to make them evolve to make it interesting?
Yeah. I mean, definitely don't just write what the characters are in the Bible, right? I mean, every person has hopes and dreams and aspirations. Put
and
those
downfalls.
in there too. Yeah, put those in there. Negative traits.
Yeah, stuff they've been through that hurt them. One of mine is an orphan, and she really didn't have a family, and that's the reason she found the circus, because she was looking for a family, and the fact that she was so lost is one of her downfalls.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely like to see the background documentation on Judge Dredd. that would be pretty cool, Christopher. I would like to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's so much stuff about Judge Dredd that's not ever, it still hasn't been revealed, and it's been 2000 AD's been going for how long now?
Yeah. And that's a great one. The storyline and how it evolved compared to most characters.
Yep.
Is amazing, I think.
So when you're doing your world building, what do you usually start with? I start with majority and magic. So what do you start with?
I start with the overall world. Like I said, we decided a circus for Bushibu, and that was really where we started with that one. Is it
a single location book? It only happens at the circus?
Well, it happens at a traveling circus. They were
okay. So they're in different places. Okay.
Yeah, Louisiana and the next scenes, and then they're going to come to Texas soon. So that's going to be amazing because I live in Texas. But yeah, in most of my books, I try to stay at reality. I have my Cryptic Haze, which in that one I really started with the overall magic of it, because it seems magical, and I wanted to do like a monkey's paw. Have you ever?
Yeah.
So
with the wishes.
I wanted to do a newer version of that, kind of a homage to Batman's A Killing Joke at the same time. So whenever I thought of those two things, those were my overall world, and then I started mixing them up and started coming up with the story.
That works. Yeah. Take what you know.
Yeah, definitely. And you always got to throw something of yourself in there.
I mean, if you don't throw something of yourself in there, then it's not your writing really. It's just some sort of robotic, soulless cash grab of writing. If you're not putting some heart into it, then you might as well not even be doing it.
Well, and there's a lot of creators out there, and we talked about this in the first episode, which was ideas. It's like, do you build your stories, for your heart, or do you build it for the cash? Because those are two separate things. I honestly believe you can find a happy medium.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say there's probably a happy medium in a lot of stuff, because there's a lot of things that you would like that are pretty mainstream. So if you want to do a mainstream thing, you can still do a mainstream thing. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, like Mary Machine Gun, she was sort of designed to be a striking character that people would notice and people would be able to recognize easily.
Right.
And it worked. Everyone knows who Mary Machine Gun is. No, not everybody, but a lot of people know who Mary Machine Gun is now, and that's pretty awesome. Now, things for like Ninja Bimbos, that was basically just written for us because we were just having a good time. Right. And then the script was much cheesier, right, until the art started coming back, and then we saw how good the art was, and we're like, oh man, we're going to step this up.
No, I hear you. I mean, it went the same with me. With like my Bushibu Circus was me and my kids, and it was really the love for us being together making that story. That's how I came into comics. Me and my kids wanted to do a project to kind of lift the house's morale.
Yeah.
So that story was just for us originally, and it just kind of grew. My second story was a passion project of mine. I wanted to talk about mental illness, kind of bring it out there, and I felt like it wasn't going to be received that well, but to me it was a story I wanted to put out there anyway.
Yeah. PTSD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Cryptic Haze to me was really probably my script that I felt like was going to connect with more people as opposed to the other two. But again, I mean, you never know where scripts go.
Yeah.
Whenever we were talking about ideas, some catch fire real fast and some don't. I thought PTSD wasn't going to sell that much, and it was my biggest seller so far.
Yeah, it looked good. I remember seeing it.
Thank you.
So it looked good. You weren't on the stream that was talking about it, but they were going over a bunch of crowdfunding things or something like that, or books that were coming out, and
yeah,
it came up on there, and they were going over it.
Yeah,
it looked good.
Thank you. Yeah, but you know, it's one of those things that I tell people. It's like you find that world, you start building it, you make your Bible, and it's easier to do your script from there. To me, these three things are really the same part of one, because that's where everything starts to go really forward in the process.
Yeah, you won't get confused either. As later on you'd be like, wait a minute, did she have a green left eye or a blue left eye? Because we got one of our characters has two different colored eyes, because she's a creation of Dr. Frankenstein.
Right.
He had two different eyes that he used, you know. So and I always have to go back and look at the character Bible, and I'm like, which color is which eye?
Yeah. So I usually kept two different notebooks. It was usually my world building and my Bible. And like I say, I had some of the pages that were like indexed, because I would put the more important information at the front so I could come and look at it, but the more of the details of the Bible in the back. So if I ever wanted to get more in depth into that character and remember more about them, that was there.
Yep, you always got to make sure to leave space too, because all your characters should be growing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, every character should evolve. It doesn't have. If you got 10 characters, not every one of them have to evolve in every issue, but every issue should have some evolution, character development. And
yeah, for sure.
Because if you don't, and it just doesn't build that story. I mean, you could have a complete story where it starts, ends, and there was something exciting in the middle, but if your character doesn't change, at least one of them, then what makes it? I mean, there's just that gap there that you could have jumped over the whole story.
Yeah. The only time you can really get away with that is when you're doing an origin story, or you're just introducing characters. Like in Human Hunters 1,
yeah,
it's just a full-on from page 1 until page 24, because I think it's 24 pages long. It might be 26 pages long. It's action.
Yeah,
the whole way through. It's just an action comic. That's all. I said it was Mission Impossible stuff.
Yeah.
So it's the female Frankenstein's creature coming down and trying to get this vase and setting the alarm off, and then the Cleo, who's the mummy, Cleopatra, she's in there. She's the hacker, because we were like, one of the things that we are, and it comes to world building, is we were thinking about the characters. We're like, you never notice, like, whenever you see these movies, you got like vampire, like Dracula, or Frankenstein, or the Werewolf Man, or any of these creatures, none of them understand, like, what's a telephone? I don't know what TV is. It's like, you've been around for 300 years. How can you not know what this crap is?
Yeah.
You would, and so like Cleo, she's our IT superstar, and she knows like 23 languages, and she's a computer whiz, and she helped invent the internet, basically. So she's superstar hacker. And so like, you learn these small things about the characters on the way through, but there's no character development. It's just, you learn, it's like, here's this character, here's what they do.
Right.
And then here's them doing that cool thing in this action scene.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how we did our introduction.
Yeah.
But with issue 2, then begins the character development and the character growth and all the changes and everything like that, because we settled down, and now that the characters have been introduced, we start with the actual main meat of the story.
And it's great to have a foundation of where you're starting before you kind of start jumping into that groove of things. I do tell people, the origin stories are important.
Yeah.
Some people,
Don't always go with a crazy origin story where it's like a character study, though. It doesn't always have to be a character study. Sometimes it can just be a cool action book.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not exactly used to origin stories. I did kind of put like a origin in Bushibu Circus, because the 3 apprentices kind of start off and it's telling you how or why they became in their roles. But I've always wondered, I guess how you start off with where they come from and where they're going without like damaging too much of the backstory.
Yeah. It's pretty difficult if you're gonna. Sorry,
No problem.
I didn't sleep much last night. If no sleep in comics.
Yeah.
If you're gonna. Oh man, I totally lost my train of thought now. What were we talking about?
Origin stories.
Yes, if you're doing an origin story, then it's usually better to do a small origin and do it at the very beginning of your book than it is to go back and do it later.
Right.
Because, like, we'll go back to Star Wars, episode 1, 2, and 3. It had Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi in it. No matter how dangerous the situation Obi-Wan Kenobi's in, I know he's going to be okay.
Right.
There's no danger there. And that robs the viewer of a lot of stuff. It'll also rob your reader.
Right.
So you got to be kind of smart about it if you're going to do an origin story type of thing where you're going to do it later, because it needs to be something that's not putting the person your origin story in mortal danger, because that's just kind of silly.
Right. So, earlier I talked about how I kind of came up with my stories. I kind of grabbed a little bit from here and a little bit from there. I've heard this quote often that there's no new stories. They're just stories that have been heard or translated and changed to modify.
Yeah. And that's pretty much the truth, really. Because if you think about it, you're like, well, like, what's your story? What's your book about? It's like, oh, it's like if you took Seven and mixed it with aliens from outer space, So, and then if they're talking about Seven, it's like, well, it's Brian is testing Zoop. Go back to the 6-gun gorilla. Oh, go back to the 6-gun gorilla omnibus. Yeah, do that. But it's just, if you're doing something, I lost my train of thought again. I'm sorry, I'm sleepy.
No problem. I understand. Yeah, no, and I tell people, there's not that many original ideas out there, and it's okay.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. So 7 would be like a mixture between like Dante's Inferno and Columbo.
Right.
Something. You could just say whatever you wanted to. As long as it's a detective story and something to do with sins, you're good to go.
Right. And like I say, it's okay to have ideas and mix them and interchange them. That's where some of the greatest stories come from.
Oh,
as long as you're not just, ripping off an idea and just trying to repackage it with a different name.
Oh, yeah. Like Ninja Bimbos. It's like Night of the Comet, big influence on it. Because, the very beginning of the book, there's a big meteor storm. And the meteors hit the ground and release this green gas that turns everyone into zombies. except for the girls that happen to survive in the strip club and some other people along the way. You know,
Yeah.
it's probably like 99% of the people get turned into zombies.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, as long as you're having fun, changing it up, making it a little bit more yours. World building and script writing aren't a hard thing to do as long as you learn what's going on. And making a Bible, I tell people, if you don't make a Bible, you're going to get lost sometimes.
Yep.
People are going to ask you questions, and you're going to be like, "Well, I knew this," and you'll know if you read it.
Yeah,
But
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
Yeah,
It's
you don't
in
get
book
it from
3.
that issue. Yeah. So it's like, just remember to script write. Remember to do your due diligence and all that good stuff. I think we hit about an hour mark. Is there anything that you would like to let people know where to reach you at? What's on Kickstarter right now?
You can go by atrocitypress.com. You can get all of our social media links there. And also there's a shop on there. Pops is putting down there the Atrocity Press Facebook page. And then there's the post for the Ninja Bimbos versus Zombies from Deep Space.
All right.
Issue 2 on Kickstarter now. Sitting at 170. Let's see the tails of the tape. We've got 10 days to go. 176 backers sitting at $6,556.
Awesome.
And we can always use more because as soon as we hit $7,000, we release the Rachel trading card. And
Awesome.
that creates that finishes the set of trading cards for this campaign.
That's awesome.
And I know a lot of you guys out there collect those cards. I know you do because I see you buying them as add-ons.
Yeah, it's been great having you. I appreciate you. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for answering all my questions. I appreciate all the viewers. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next week with another great show.
Peace.
Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
The sun peeks over the horizon. Your excitement builds. The animals in the field start to stir. The forest comes alive with sounds. The sunlight glimmers off the lake, and the mountains start to shed their morning fog. So load up your favorite ammo, grab a few buddies, and head out to make some memories. And tell the rest of the world that you've gone hunting. Gone Hunting is a 1 to 4 player game of family fun where you build a unique hunting ground, scout different animals, buy weapons and gear, and roll dice to hunt. Complete objectives and try not to miss. So let's load up the truck and back Gone Hunting today. See you in the field.
Bringing you sex, sass, and style. Buckle up and unlock your imagination for a fun adventure with these death-dealing dames. They sail the galaxy in search of spoils. The most dangerous acquisition, and the most fruitful, are the legendary Splinters of Yggdrasil. The Splinters are magical artifacts forged from the Tree of Life that wreak havoc on the universe. The missions are perilous, but the bounty is glorious. Enjoy our hyper-fictional wonderland. How is a pirate ship sailing through space? 'Cause magic. How do they heal so quickly after battle? 'Cause magic. How are they able to communicate through jewelry? 'Cause magic. It's all about the characters. Abo, rough, robotic, ready. Mo, carefree, callous, courageous. Mistress Graven, daring, diplomatic, dominating. Betsy, academic, accountable, aristocratic. Nefara, ancient, assured, adrenaline junkie. Bruto, proud, prominent, protective. Fisty, independent, incendiary, invigorating. Roxy, superficial, scarred, secretive. Once you get to know this diverse crew of mythical miscreants, You'll be anxious to find out what trouble they'll get into on the next episode. Go to abogrizzly.com and order both halves of the first episode today.
Man on a mission, I'ma get it. You know I be on a what? Yeah. You know I be on a what? Man on a mission, I'ma get it. You know I be on a what? Yeah. It's all hard, ain't no fear here. You ain't giving this to all, you steer clear. Never beat, I've been down and I reappear. You got some money on the line, you better put it here. Rolling in and doing.
Come get some.
How do you end this thing? How do you put the where's the brakes on this bus? I forgot.
Jazz
how to do it.
hands. Jazz hands.
Have a good night.
Comic Books for Kids provides comic books to kids in hospitals and cancer centers across the U.S. It's a place where we can all work together to make sure every child has a comic book. 100% of all proceeds go towards the kids. It's about making a difference, and while they're in the hospital, allowing them to fly like a superhero, battle dragons, or rescue teddy bears. We are in every state in the country and now support over 160 hospitals. Every month, we add